Most people don't actually realize how much lower body stiffness reduces their quality of life and overall capabilities. The 90-90 switch totally changes that. Your feet, ankles, knees, and hips start to unlock, and your lower body can finally unfold its true potential. And today, I'll show you how to do this step by step, irrespective of your fitness level. If you're looking for a single exercise that transforms your entire lower body mobility, look no further, you've come to the right place. Now, the deep squat itself is one of the most foundational positions when it comes to our overall mobility. It can have an amazingly positive impact on your quality of life. Not to mention that it is the avenue for more advanced peak efficiency mobility drills like the ones we're going to do today. And that means our very first mission objective is to squat down ass to grass with both feet flat on the floor, and more importantly, develop the necessary strength and flexibility to hold this position for multiple minutes at a time. Thankfully for you, the easiest method to master the resting squat is to resting squat. Lower down into this position and work your way up to holding it for multiple minutes at a time. And if you're struggling with hitting depth, elevate your heels, which will help you to hit full ass to grass depth irrespective of your overall mobility. And once that increases, you can start reducing said elevation until your feet are fully flat on the floor. Now, this will already take care of our most egregious mobility deficits, specifically our ankles, knees, and hips, stretching our posterior chain surrounding our hip joint while strengthening our anterior chain, specifically our tibialis, which is responsible for ankle flexion, our hip flexors, and our core, which will be responsible to keep us seated and upright in this position without falling backwards. Now, this moves us to separating the internal rotations from the movement pattern, and depending on your flexibility and strength, we have multiple starting positions. If you're lacking the necessary strength, you will go through those movements with your back pushed against the wall, taking off most of the strength requirements for this movement pattern. If you're lacking flexibility, you will work with your heels elevated, taking care of most of the flexibility requirements in this movement pattern. And if you have both, you will sit down with both feet flat on the floor, bring your hands behind your head to maximize the flexibility and the strength benefits we can get from this exercise. Rotating your hip internally by bringing your knee down right in front of your opposite foot, reversing the movement, rolling over your toes, lengthening your entire foot musculature. And here comes the very important part. We're not just going through those movements, we are actively flexing the involved muscles as much as we can. That means when going downwards, we are actively flexing our adductors and our hip flexors, pushing our knee towards the floor, and when reversing, we are actively flexing our glutes and pulling that knee outward. From the same starting position, we can now start incorporating a combination of external rotation in our hip by pushing our knee outwards actively as much as we can, bringing our knee down, and then activating our posterior chain, strengthening our glutes and our biceps. But more importantly, lengthening our anterior chain from the insertions down here around our knee all the way throughout our hip flexor and the tiniest bit in our lower abdominals, rolling over our toes, reversing this movement, having an insane amount of core engagement and hip flexor strength as well before we repeat the same thing on the other side. Of course, all of those will be executed from your respective starting position, either with your back against the wall or of course with your heels elevated, reducing the flexibility you will need for this movement. This way we can get the full benefits of hip flexor stretching and combine it with foot flexibility, ankle flexion, and of course hip extensor strength. Additionally, working on our control by avoiding to slam our knee down and going through this pattern in a very controlled fashion, which is something that you, of course, can do with your hands for support until you develop the necessary feeling for this movement pattern before you start moving through it without assistance. This video is sponsored by you. By liking this video, subscribing to this channel, and watching the whole thing, you're helping me buy more gourmet food for my void so it doesn't slit my throat while I am asleep. Combining these two separate movements already has a myriad of benefits on its own. Most importantly, that we are utilizing more unilateral movement patterns, which in turn are going to help us massively work on our mind-muscle connection and our control in our lower body musculature. Meaning that now that we've done them separately, you can start putting them together into one fluent motion, switching from unilateral internal hip rotation towards unilateral external hip rotation. Doubling down on our internal rotation with a long range of motion on one side and a shorter range of motion on the other side, and of course doing that into both directions once again by flexing all the necessary muscles. Just be careful not to crush your balls. Of course, doubling down on our external rotation, and now we have an amazing bonus. Pushing our knees outwards as much as we can, bringing both of them down to the floor, and now moving into this kneeling pseudo hip thrust, extending our hips, flexing our posterior chain, and leaning back as far as we can. Now opening up our entire anterior chain, moving throughout our quads, all the way through our hip flexors, our lower abdominals, and even our upper abdominals. Reversing this movement in a controlled fashion by flexing our hip flexors. Hold this resting position for a second with the movement pattern looking something like this. We are not just doing this for fun, but adding this backwards bend will stretch our abdominals, which will release tightness we might carry around our lumbar spine. Releasing tightness in our lumbar spine will help us with our hip mobility because those two are connected. Start with a short range of motion, get a little bit of a feeling for this back bend, and once you get a little bit more comfortable, you can increase that range of motion as much as you like. Now we can finally go through the first level of the 90-90 switch, combining internal rotation on one side, rolling over our toes, lengthening into complete ankle extension, and then moving into external rotation on the other side. Enjoy any sort of stretches you might have surrounding your hip joint. And this is actually the hardest part. We will start with the externally rotated leg first until our foot once again is flat on the floor. And now we need massive strength, rolling over our toes, flexing our ankle and reversing us back into the starting position and moving into the same movement pattern into the other direction. Either with your hands behind your head, with your back against the wall, like so, requiring almost no strength at all, especially when reversing this movement. We also have the option of sitting down all the way and combining internal with external hip rotation, like so, until you have mastered the progression, build the necessary flexibility and strength. Not to mention that, of course, we can just work with our hands once again for support, taking off as much strength requirements as we need to go through the entire movement. And once again, once we have developed everything we need, we can do it all by ourselves. Now this will help you work on what is probably the most neglected and the most important part of upper body mobility, and as mentioned before, will have an amazingly positive impact on your hip mobility and lower body mobility as well. Starting with the same exact movement, we will turn our upper body as far as we can to the side, bring both hands flat on the floor, and now we will lean down until our face touches the floor, holding this position for even up to 30 seconds before now combining the complete spinal rotation with external and internal rotation, ankle extension and flexion, hip extension and flexion, and basically stretching every single muscle fiber in our entire body. The further we lean forward, the more we deepen the stretch surrounding our quads and our hip flexors and our glutes, our spinal erectors, our abdominals, especially our transverse abdominis, opening up our chest and shoulders by elevating our elbows, and then going through the entire movement in a nice, slow, controlled fashion, so we can add as much strength benefits to this amazing stretchy part as we can. And finally, let me show you how to string those together for a complete routine. Internal rotations, like so. Doubling down on our internal rotations, like so. Moving into external rotation on the left and on the right before we combine double external rotations with hip extension, and moving back into the 90-90 switch in an upright seated position, of course, into both directions, and then adding that insane amount of spinal rotation and upper body stretchy and mobility bonuses we have been talking about before. Which means that you will take each one of those steps, go through it twice for a full minute each, and then adding 2 or 3 rounds of stringing those movements together, as we did in the last chapter. And if you can do that 3 to 4 times a week, you will be absolutely blown away by how fast you are progressing. With that said, I'll probably see you very soon. Until then, Captain Cairo, peace out.